The offseason officially underway at Halas Hall and in Chicago as the Bears embark on what should be a doozy of a head coach search and a doozy of a morning with all of the fun interviews that occurred as the team wrapped up the underwhelming 2024 season. Welcome into the Bear Report. I'm Steven Johnson. He is Zack Pearson. We're here to cover everything that happened this morning between Ryan Poles, Kevin Warren, George McCaskey, and everything that we should be coming to expect here over these next few weeks as the Bears find their leader of men and hopefully a coach that will last a lot longer than Matt Eberflus and hopefully not embarrass the franchise overall. And Zack, you were there, and I tell you, there was a lot that occurred today that really makes me question whether or not this is the correct group of folks that should be in charge of finding a head coach.
Well, here we go again. That's the first thing I gotta say. The second thing, yeah, it was another interesting day, and I don't know how anyone can feel any more confident that they're going to get this right. I didn't really feel a lot of confidence from Ryan Poles. I didn't really feel a lot of confidence from Kevin Warren. Mark Potash, my colleague, tweeted out while we're listening to Kevin Warren, it's a bunch of BS. And then after listening to George McCaskey, I have no clue what to think about this coaching search. Today, let me say this. I don't know how much we should have expected from George and Kevin. I guess Ryan, had to answer the questions because there were some, good questions and there were some things that he needed to answer because of how the season went. However, leaving it, like I said, I just don't feel it's just, you got to prove it to me and you got to show me that you can get this thing right for me to fully trust you.
Yeah, and I mean to that extent, I think for a lot of folks out there was definitely a trust concern that was heading into today, and there really wasn't much to qualm those fears in regards to getting that trust in play, and really each one of the three had specific things to say that made you kind of pause for a second and say, did you really need clarification on that, or is that what you truly think? So I think just we'll kind of go down the line here with how things unfolded, and we'll start with Ryan Poles, who again, oddly enough, had to make I guess clear the air is the right word, or clarify that there's no issues between him and Kevin Warren. And it's just like they're wanting to create drama without anybody specifically asking about the drama, with things that have been said in recent weeks, time and time again. The last time that we saw Ryan Poles look like a deer in the headlights. Here we are again, going back to that conversation when no one even asked him if that was a problem. And then he goes into this tangent about how they're going to be so thorough with this search, but they're going to be fast and they're going to be direct. And here's the thing. There are teams out there with very good ties to the top names that are available in the head coaching search overall for the 6 spots that are now open after Antonio Pierce was let go today by the Raiders. They can't be this thorough with a list that has grown to 14 candidates.
Yeah. I mean, they said that they're probably going to add more. Like, they're probably going to add some college names to it. Yeah, I don't know. And it was a good question by Jason Leisure because he asked, you've had a month and a half now, and you can't really interview people that have jobs, obviously, during the season. Right. When they interview Ben Johnson, it's going to be virtually. They have it till Monday just because of the rules. So why is it taking so long to go through this process and then also come out with this list of 14, 15 names. It's probably going to grow. Like, I don't know. I feel like I'm all for casting a wide net. I do think you should talk to people and ask, how would you fix this? How would you handle Caleb Williams? What do you think is wrong with our organization? Because the writers, everyone in there knows, there's a lot of issues, and apparently the Bears just don't know. I mean, for example, today they had Ryan Poles at the podium, and they had George McCaskey and Kevin Warren in a really small corner of the midway, the hallway, right when you get into Halas Hall.
Yeah.
It's like, and I get it, like you want Ryan Poles to have his own spotlight, but it makes it so difficult because it's just an old school media scrum where no one's getting a question in, no one can see, no one can hear. Just how they operate at times is just still mind-boggling to me. And I feel like they're taking this into this coaching search. Like, it's, I go back to, can you trust them? We've seen it. Like, we asked George, what makes it so different this time around? And his answer was, well, Ryan Poles is the guidance of Kevin Warren. And it's like, George, since you took over, you've had 4 to 5 head coaches. You've been to playoffs 3 times, like twice. Like, what do you guys need to do to figure us out? And it's just like kind of the same old, same old.
Yeah, and he continues to say that he understands that it falls at his feet for the failures that have continued to occur with looking for a GM, looking for a head coach, and yet here we are again
Doing
with
it all over.
Yes, and I get he's the chairman,
Yeah,
but leave the head coaching decisions up to the gentleman that you hire to make your football decisions. That's the part that I just don't understand. It's just like he's saying one thing but doing something else out of the other side of his mouth. And it's just this, does he think we're stupid? Like, I want to ask that because, again, this is 3rd, 4th, 5th time that we've heard these same exact things.
Yeah, and they kind of, I'm getting the impression that they think like, okay, we have a leadership council, and we have all these voices in the room to help pick a head coach. But last time they hired Bill Polian to consult them, and look where it led them to. Like, Trace Armstrong has an impact. He was the agent for Ryan Poles and Matt Eberflus, and it's just like they're easily persuaded, and I don't know, for whatever reason they can't get it right. And it's like, what did they say today that leads us to believe they're going to get this right, other than, okay, Kevin Warren's got more of an impact. But even then, at times he can be kind of more of a salesman than, you know what I mean? Like, it's more politics coming out of his mouth than anything else. And
it absolutely is. And even with the stadium talk today, which we'll probably get to a little bit later here, but looking at this group that is now looking for the next head coach of the Chicago Bears, you have the director of football administration, Matt Feinstein, senior director of player personnel, Jeff King, the chief HR officer, Liz Geist, and then Poles, Warren, McCaskey, and Ian Cunningham will be there when time allows, when he's not seeking GM opportunities. Yeah. Quote, the 2 or 3 opportunities, albeit he was a finalist for the Titans position, which is now open again. Would not be shocked, given that they have the number 1 overall pick, if he ends up getting that job this time around, if things work that way. But I'm sitting here looking at this list. What does a chief HR officer have to do with a head coach search in the NFL outside of rewinding a year to the point where a defensive coordinator was fired around potential, we never heard the full story, potential HR issues. And so now I'm
a running back coach too.
Right. And so now I'm wondering, where there's smoke, there's usually fire. And I can't help but feel like this inclusion of having your chief HR officer kind of alludes to that situation. That, obviously not much, football smarts to how would you fix this? But clearly from a culture standpoint, I don't know. I mean, I feel like at this point in time, you know who you're bringing in. And
Yeah.
if you don't know who you're bringing in, what have you been doing the last month? I mean, have you been researching? Have you been calling to get any background information on these 14 names to
Yeah.
understand the type of person that you're bringing in to interview with each of these candidates? It just seems like they've been sitting on their hands and there's been no clear research that's been done to the fact that we're at 14. You would think that for a month, maybe, yeah, start with 14 after
Yeah.
Thanksgiving. Be down to like 6 by now. Because a lot of
I,
these guys, they could have been interviewing.
yeah. I mean, Pete Carroll, he's one, David Shaw, I believe.
Yep.
I don't, like I said, I'm fine with casting the wide net. I get it. But at the same time, it's like, what is the process going to be here? And they're going to begin interviews this week. But if you want to hire Ben Johnson, you have to wait potentially until after the Super Bowl. You know what I mean? Like, you could have a handshake agreement in place, but you can't announce until after the Super Bowl if they get to the Super Bowl. I don't know. It's an interesting list because I do feel like it's a lot of names you can, listen to or look at and be like, maybe we just want feedback. You know what I mean? But are you wasting time? Probably could have done the feedback with Bill Belichick before he took the North Carolina job. I don't know. It's like I said, they got to get this right. They got to find a way to get it right, and we'll see. And the other thing, I think, kind of switching gears, something that's very important in the coaching search. We really didn't get a concrete answer today, and it was asked multiple times about Ryan Poles' contract. And Ryan Poles does not want to answer it. He thinks it's too personal. I get it, whatever. Wish NFL teams were way more open about it because it's so much easier, and I think it actually benefits the Bears and the GM if the fans actually know, because then they're not bugging everyone. They're not wondering what's going on. We can't get answers. It's going to come out. Some agent's going to leak it during one of the interviews that a coach or a coaching candidate has. It will come out. What I got from it was, I think Ryan Poles has not been extended yet.
No.
Still got 1 year.
Mm-hmm.
They're going to enter a situation where they're going to, in these interviews, break down the structure, break down who reports to who, make it known, hey, Ryan Poles is on a 1-year deal still. We will extend him. We plan to extend him. Are you comfortable with this? I do think the notion that a lot of these candidates want to bring in their own GMs, I don't know if I believe that all too much. You know what I mean? Like, is Ben Johnson really going in there and I want my GM and I'm not taking the job? You know what I mean? Like, it's possible, but is it a deal breaker? I mean, I don't know. But you don't want a lame duck GM either. I get that.
No, you don't. And I think that's what makes one of the names on this committee interesting in Jeff King.
Yeah.
That's a part of this, is because he has a very good relationship with Ben Johnson.
Yes.
There's been people in the national media that have talked about this for quite some time. There's the possibility that, hey, there are some places that, might do the same thing, might have the same thing, where it's like, okay, you want to bring in your own GM? Trent Baalke in Jacksonville. I think a lot of people were hoping that he'd be fired.
Goodness.
Who's to say that Ben Johnson walks in there and says, I want him gone, I want King as my GM, and that's it.
Yeah.
I mean, King has been getting GM interviews in the past.
Yeah, 100%.
So it's not like it'd be some like out of right field epiphany that he would get that job. And to that point, there was a really interesting quote from Kevin Warren when he was asked about the contract, and he goes, when we say long term, a year is a lifetime.
Yeah, that's the quote that got me. That's the quote where I'm like, okay, does not have the extension. This might be, this is it for Ryan Poles. You know what I mean? Like, we might, or the plan might be, Kevin Warren might say privately, like, we might be moving on from Ryan Poles after this year if it doesn't work out. I don't know. George McCaskey said he was asked about the structure and if it was a problem if a candidate wanted to report directly to him or have an open line of communication to the owners and the ownership. And he said, I've never seen that. And I'm pretty sure Tampa Bay probably does it that way. I'm pretty sure multiple organizations. I don't know if George didn't hear the question right or understand the question right.
I'll go with understand.
Yeah, that's fine. Sure. But yeah, I mean, we're gonna find out if Ryan Poles. My best guess is, I think they'll probably extend him. I think they'll make the coaching candidate aware. But also, if Ben Johnson wants his own GM, what do you do? Are you not going to get Ben Johnson and instead land, Brian Flores or Aaron Glenn? I don't know. I mean, it's kind of interesting.
And that was the other thing that I was curious about when it came to that vertical structure that George had talked about when he's saying, head coach reports to the GM reports to the president reports to the chairman. To the point of Jeff King being on this committee, let's say Ian Cunningham goes off and picks up one of these GM positions elsewhere. And then Ben Johnson comes in and says, well, I want Jeff King to be the GM. There's ultimately nothing stopping the Bears from saying, well, okay, well, right now you're calling Ryan Poles, the head of football operations.
Yeah.
So call him the president of football operations.
Yeah.
Give Jeff King the GM role.
The GM.
Keep your new head coach happy.
Yeah.
And you're not disrupting that structure at all.
Yeah. And I think the Jeff King relationship with Ben Johnson is good for the Bears. Cause like you mentioned, man, like does Ben Johnson even want to go down to Jacksonville and even talk to Balky? You know what I mean? Like what? I don't know. I mean, I think having a relationship with Jeff King is interesting. There's probably someone, I haven't really done a lot of research, probably someone in the Detroit organization that Ben Johnson's probably close to that's probably going or on their way up to being a GM in the near future. Would you want to bring that somewhere?
I mean, they've been drafting pretty damn well for the
right?
last several years.
And
so
guess what?
It's not a terrible thing.
That's what they've been drafting. The biggest needs for the Bears, too. The trenches. They've been drafting the trenches. They've been drafting linebackers, playmakers, defensive backs.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, it's an interesting dynamic, though, to say the least, this whole contract situation.
Absolutely. And then the last thing I want to touch on from the Ryan Poles interview that just it just kind of it felt as though Poles' head wasn't in the interview or even in the room when he asked for clarification on the struggles and the issues that Caleb Williams has had to face this year, and just everything that has gone into the season. And he asked for clarification on what he's talking about when coaches have been fired. He's been dealing with personnel issues. His offensive line has been garbage. I mean, he has dealt with. I don't know, and that to me was kind of a tipping point there. That if he truly didn't know what, I don't know who it was that asked that.
Dan Weeder. It was Dan Weeder.
Yeah. Okay, so Dan Weeder are asking that. If he truly didn't know what Dan was referring to, we hear about these reflection moments, and we'll get to Warren's interview next. I mean, it contradicts everything that Warren said about Ryan Poles.
Yeah.
In how he's learning and he's willing to reflect and say he knows when he makes mistakes, gaining wisdom and insight. Clearly he's not.
Yeah, clearly something's not correct. But
right.
But here's the thing, like, I'm pretty sure Ryan Poles has said at the last press conference with Matt Eberflus when they fired him, some of the stuff that Dan was talking about. I'm pretty sure he talked about some of that stuff. Makes no sense because, like, we've heard the same, like what was the question? There was a question about off-season training camp things. Because we've heard DJ Moore, we've heard Mercedes Lewis, you've heard Keenan Allen, you've heard numerous players, DeMarcus Walker's hinted at stuff like that there were issues. Jalen Johnson, there was issues in training camp with what they were doing. If you read any of my notebooks on the Bear Report, I would tell people the offensive line is bad. The offense is struggling. They're false starting. They are not performing well in 7-on-7. In a drill, the football should never touch the ground. It's almost better that there's an interception than the ball hitting the ground because it's a 7-on-7 drill and there is no pass rush. Like right. It's one of the more simpler drills. And he's talked about it. Players have talked about it. And now today he's like, he said it again. And he said it, we're having the false starts, the pre-snap stuff. And he said that they needed to clean it up. He said, but they also did clean it up and that it might not have. So what the hell was going on? Like, was Shane Waldron and Matt Eberflus just like so clueless with things? And it's funny because like watching that Seattle game, and we didn't do a podcast after that game, but watching that Seattle game, I was thinking to myself, I tweeted it out. I'm like, they're continuing to false start, continuing to have illegal motion penalties. The game management, the clock management from Thomas Brown is awful. And honestly, I don't blame Thomas Brown because for what now, 6, 7, 8 months, that type of thing has been in that building and they've done nothing to fix it. So it's like an addiction. They're also like they're programmed for false starts. And you know what I mean? Like I can't blame them, but it's like it's just been in that building. It's like a nasty flu that's been in that building. They just all have just taken it in. You know what I mean? Like I don't know, but Ryan Poles talked about that today. And it's like
process over outcome.
Yeah, process over outcome. To me, I think they got so caught up into the hype of what this season could have been and the hard knocks and the outside noise that they just glossed over everything and just kind of went through the motions. And it's pretty sad when you're having players like speak out to the media like, we got to fix these things. What the hell is going on? Like Cole Kmet said it. I don't know.
And to that point, and I think, again, disconnect beyond everything. I want to give this quote that George McCaskey had to say about Tyreek Stevenson. And saying, talking about the Hail Mary in Washington and Tyreek Stevenson's role in that play. Saying, quote, I had never seen anything like that as an observer of this great game for more than 60 years. This is like the most like piss poor written thing. I was more interested in it after it happened in his reaction and his teammates' reaction. I think he understood that he made a mistake. He owned up to it. He apologized to his teammates. He apologized to the fans, and he said he was going to learn from it. And I think he did.
Oh.
At what point after that play occurred made you think Tyreek Stevenson understood what he did and was willing to correct it and get better as a football player? He had some of the most mediocre plays as well as additional boneheaded plays, including potentially, I believe he tripped somebody on the sideline and he wasn't even in the game.
Yeah.
I mean, he's doing dumb things again, and your chairman is going to sit here and say that he learned from it? Get out of here.
I wonder if that's recency bias because I'll be fair. I think Tyreek Stevenson had a pretty good game against the Packers. That was the first game that he looked normal in. You know what I mean?
And he still gave up a giant play that he poorly played that was just a giant floater for whatever reason got behind the receiver instead in front of him.
Yeah, but that was like the most normal game he's played in 10 weeks.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering, like, is that what George is talking about? Because I was kind of sitting there thinking, like, accountability, they benched him for a series. You know, Jalen Johnson spoke last week and was talking about accountability and players needing to learn and not play if something like that happens. I mean, that's a play that just totally changed the season around. And yeah, what is George I'm with you, man. What's it's like? I don't know what they watch them. I don't know, man. They do a lot of things
He
backwards
needs to
there.
go take a couple more laps around Lambeau before the
Oh,
game, apparently, and
yeah,
clear his head, so he can think straight. Yeah, Kevin Warren, like you mentioned, out in the hallway afterwards, not even following up at the podium. It's almost like they wanted to
it's
keep you
weird.
guys on your toes
It's
and just
impossible to get a question in too because you're screaming over everyone, and if you don't
right.
rush in there, I was stuck in the back. I was right next to Mark Potash and a couple other people in the back, and there was reporters that were just way on the other side of the room, like it's not even worth it. And it's just like this is how it is. This is exactly how it is, man. This is
It's controlled chaos to help control a
yes,
narrative, and
exactly.
it's something that the Bears have continued to do over the course of the last few years, and it's gotten significantly more noticeable.
Yeah,
Today being a big piece of that, but Ryan Warren, sitting here, and or Kevin Warren, excuse
Kevin
me,
Warren.
um,
We should
sitting
combine
here.
them actually. Combine Ryan
We
Poles and Kevin
should.
Warren, right?
Yeah, we'll have to come up with a good nickname for that. But again, you know, sit here and say, Ryan Poles is a hard worker. He's young, he's talented, he's curious. I think his greatest tribute, he's willing, as he did just in the press conference, to raise his hand and say, here's some things where he fell short. And I mean, it feels as though we're listening to two different press conferences from what Ryan Poles said and what Kevin Warren's is telling us, almost to a gaslighting
Yeah.
aspect of he's got this, he's got it down. He's our general manager, he's head of football operations. Everything is great, and he's getting things done, and it's just like I don't see how somebody who has one of the worst uh, winning percentages in team history, if not the worst, as GM, now heading into what will be his fourth year, and say that he's got to be willing to learn from his mistakes. I mean, he's making more mistakes as time goes on.
Yeah.
There's nothing there that says to me he is learning from them, and yet here we have Kevin Warren not only saying that, but in a way, then be wanting to, like you said, play politician with
Yeah.
his words, and then flip back to the stadium conversation, which he was on a
Oh,
tangent on again today, which, just regurgitating a lot of the same things that we've heard when we know very well, even from just listening to other politicians in Illinois, specifically Governor J.B. Pritzker, that the the city and the state are not going to get along on this
no.
to
No.
keep the museum campus a real possibility to quote unquote put shovels in the ground in 2025, like Kevin Warren says is going to happen.
You could have had shovels on the ground in Arlington Heights in 2025. Could have had in
Could have had in
2024.
2024.
Yeah. Like potentially 2023. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like what I this dream of this lakefront stadium, and it's just every time it's like from that press conference where they're thanking God for the Bears and Kevin Warren, and it's just like and all this, and it's like, what are we doing here? Like, what you're not going to get any help. Like, if you not listened to the politicians, like if you not paid attention to what's going on, like it's mind boggling. But what's the obvious answer? Arlington Heights, and
And
it's just
and, and he even said that they had been making
progress there
good
with it.
progress there.
Yeah,
I mean, what else is there to say except if you're making progress in one of the two spots, specifically the one that you actually own, that you
yeah.
can own outright without
You
the
already
looming
demolished.
headache of a city and a park district hanging over your head, taking your revenue, that would be the ideal spot for you to build a stadium and an entire entertainment campus that could rival the best in the league.
They don't want that. What progress have they
Why?
made with the city one? None. They made nothing with the city one. I just, like I said, dude, they do a lot of things backwards. They had that press conference the night before they were drafting Caleb Williams. You couldn't have waited a week and a half, 2 weeks, couldn't have waited the week before. Like, they just, nothing is thought through, man. It's the same thing every time. It's crazy. And I wasn't shocked with the whole stadium stuff. It's just like, when I heard that, and then he's like, well, we have the options and Arlington Heights. I'm like, there you go. That's your option, man. That's it right there. Welcome to the new, you're finally caught up. You're finally caught up with everyone else. Like, but yeah, I mean, like I said, today, I think the bottom point line is, and I think you agree with this, like, nothing that was said today makes you feel any confidence about the next couple weeks to month, depending on how long they have to wait, maybe if they want a certain target. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, again, a specific quote that occurred this morning from JB Pritzker, just talking about the relationship with Brandon Johnson and criticizing the Chicago mayor for the fact there's been zero communication, saying, quote, they don't reach out very often, and it seems like they don't have good relationships in Springfield, in part because they don't reach out very often, saying that Brandon Johnson has only called him 5 times in 2 years. And, we're sitting here saying that, Kevin Warren's got this great relationship with the city, and that's great, but you're also asking for public subsidies.
Yeah.
And if you want that to occur, you need to have those relationships in Springfield to make that a reality. And clearly that's not something that even the Bears can bridge a gap on. So why it's even being considered to, even put a feather in the cap that, hey, we're doing great with the mayor, when clearly he's not doing great with anybody else here.
No.
And it just continues to be this.
But to be fair, the mayor will not be here he'll not be in office when the stadium's built anyway.
No, not at all.
Not to get too political, but it's just trending that way. You know what I mean? Like, it's
right. And again, even going, like you mentioned, going back to that press conference and showing what they wanted to do, they could literally do that. Like, there's nothing stopping them from doing that. That same exact thing. Build a replica of the columns if you want to create that park atmosphere. Build other things around it. Build that same exact stadium.
Yeah.
Nothing is stopping you.
No, well, themselves.
Well, yeah.
I mean, they're stopping.
Even the public transportation, it's right there.
I know.
There's a literal metro stop in front of the old Arlington racetrack.
Do you think they've even been out there?
No. No, not at all. I just don't, and that's the worst part.
I've been there once, and I probably know more than they do about it.
They're probably still pretending that they're testing all the grounds, making sure they're not contaminated or whatever.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, if they want to dig they're going to have to do that in other places too. You know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah. Like I said, man, what made you confident? Anything that was said today, what made you confident? Nothing. Like, literally nothing. Nothing made me confident.
Yeah. It just, I'm looking through all the quotes, and I'm just trying to find something that makes me say, okay.
I will say this. There's one thing.
Okay.
When Ryan Poles talked about what he wanted in a head coach, I think that was actually good. I think that was one of the best quotes of the day. Because to me, it was Ben Johnson, who he was describing.
Okay.
I do think he said clear vision, developmental mindset, really good game management. We did not see this year, which we did not see last year.
Nope.
And a plan to develop the quarterback. I think that's Ben Johnson. I think that's exactly what, if you were to ask any Bears fan what they'd want, most of them would say that. Like, those are probably the 3 to 4 things that you need in the head coach. I thought that was actually a really good answer. That was probably the best quote of it. We talked about the process over the outcome. I think that, I would agree with that too. I think they kind of got too lost, like I said, lost in the offseason hype, and we're just okay. We're good enough to turn this thing around, but they're not. They're not. They were not good enough to turn it around despite all the stuff. So I do think that was probably the best part of the press conference. But overall, I mean, just very bland, very,
Yep.
not like we didn't learn a lot of good, in my opinion.
No, and to kind of piggyback off of that, Pole's also talking about, saying, I think we need to challenge our guys more. And when we talk about accountability, there's systems of accountability, how, we're going to put up tape of this is not how we do it. And then examples of this is how we do it. Sometimes that can be uncomfortable. I call that healthy friction. And I definitely think we need more of that. And, the fact that that just wasn't happening in general, even from inside the locker room, and it is a trickle down effect that you, again, the leader of men phrase that's getting thrown around, but at the same time, you want that to also translate to players that you can rely on in the locker room. And I struggle to honestly think, outside of Caleb Williams, who are guys that you can sit here and say, these are your leaders who will hold people accountable. Kevin Byard, but he's only signed for another year.
They don't have that. I mean, they don't have that.
No, they don't. They don't. And Jalen Johnson was supposed to be that.
Yeah.
I think there were times where he wanted to be, but then he just, once the season was lost, like it was just kind of like, okay.
Yeah.
Like
Montez Sweat's not it.
No, he's not. And DJ Moore, I mean, I think we saw more diva out of him once the contract was signed. We saw a different side of him that we didn't necessarily see a year ago. Maybe Roma Dunze in year 2, he develops into that kind of person. But again, it's not something that we saw by any means. But yet through even the draft process and the combine last year, we saw that he has that determination. So maybe he taps into that as some potential. You have the two, high-paid linebackers in TJ Edwards, Tremaine Edmonds. Maybe they're one of them. I don't think it's going to be Brisker. If he ever comes back, he's still apparently he's never been cleared from his concussion.
It's been Kevin Byard.
That's truly been it.
It's been Kevin Byard, and that's it. No one on the offense. I'd maybe Caleb, but he's also in a place where he's a rookie. You know what I mean? It's kind of, you have to kind of still, he's respected in the locker room. You kind of have to still, toe a fine line. You can't just come in and be bossing people around all the time. You know what I mean? But like, they don't have that almost alpha or that dog in them where it's like someone needs to, like, this crap's too far. We got to, like, especially the offensive line, man. Like, someone's got to step up and say something. I think the closest they had was Cole Kmet, but he did it through the media.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's the other thing, is just doing it through the correct channels without pissing off other players and coaches and anyone else, is that that's a filter. And that's something that's learned with time. Some guys get it right away, some don't. And some guys never will.
Yeah.
So again, there needs to be something, anything, where even when you're interviewing guys, when it comes to the combine and the draft, and that you're making sure that these 3 picks, you're getting guys that have some grit, some voice, that are willing to step up, even if they're going to be rookies. Use this cap. I mean, they're probably going to have nearly $90 million in cap room when it's all said and done. They're probably going to cut Bates. They'll probably cut Gerald Everett. That's $9 million between those two guys right there. Again, there is ample opportunity for them to come in and find guys that can be those voices. It's just, again, like this head coaching search, finding the trust that they'll actually do it correctly. And I don't think we can fully say that right now at this point in time.
No, not yet, at least. I mean, we like I said, we have to see it. Go get an alpha. Go get a guy that can change your locker room culture as a player too. Yeah, I mean, let's talk about the coaching news of the day. So, like, we've talked. They got a list.
Yep.
It's a lengthy one, but since you and I have talked earlier today, so Mike McCarthy gets denied. The Cowboys deny, which
fine with me.
There you go. And I'm kind of curious on your thoughts on this. I And he's not my first choice, not my second choice, probably not my third or fourth. He has a better name than a lot of candidates on the list, right? Like which is
Right.
not really saying much. How would you have been disappointed or mad if they hired him? Because I probably would have been disappointed at first just because it would have meant they probably missed out on Ben Johnson. They probably missed out on Mike Vrabel. They probably missed out on, let's say, Joe Brady or Aaron Glenn. So you're kind of, in a way, settling, but not. But he's got coaching experience. I feel like he's a high floor regular season type coach,
Yeah.
but like a low ceiling postseason coach. He'll get you there, but you're not winning in the. You know what I mean?
Right. And I think to that point, and kind of circling back to one of the comments that was made by polls today in regards to what they're going to be looking for when it comes to the game management, that's not Mike McCarthy. We have seen time and time again from his time, both in Green Bay and in Dallas,
Yeah.
that he has made numerous errors that have cost his team games in significant situations, multiple NFC championship games, to where you can't come out and say, we need somebody who excels at this and then settle for Mike McCarthy. That is a slap in the face. I'd be pissed. I would absolutely be pissed if he were to be signed as coach, because not only do you have that aspect of it, but he would command a much more significant contract than I think a lot of these guys would, because he has a Super Bowl ring, and that carries weight in this league.
Yeah. I mean, it's not going to be an option. It's very likely Dallas will probably retain him. I agree to a 1 or 2 year deal with him. Give it another go. The other news is, I mean, we could add another name, Pete Carroll. It was rumored, but the Bears have 2 interviews set up this week so far, with dates. They'll interview Ben Johnson this week virtually. They got until Monday to do it, I believe. Same with Aaron Glenn. I'm honestly, they'll probably do it the same day, probably do it back to back with them. We have Mike Vrabel Wednesday, if he even makes it to Chicago. I mean, New England could move fast on that. They got the Rooney rule, which is a total joke. Like, teams exploit that like crazy.
I mean, aren't the Bears kind of doing the same thing though with Thomas Brown?
Well, he won't count towards it.
Oh, he won't. Okay.
No, he won't count
because he's currently injured.
because he's
right.
current.
Yeah, so I mean, I guess Aaron Glenn is that
would
player.
Be
in that regard.
Or I mean, David Shaw would be another one.
Yeah.
Another coaching candidate. I just like when you see like, oh, they've already completed it, and then a reporter makes it like points out they've completed the Rooney Rule, they're ready to. You know what I mean? It's kind of just it exploits it. It's dumb to exploit it. Does Mike Vrabel make it to Chicago Wednesday? I gotta imagine at least gets the interview talks. But will he wait for it? Will he wait for the job? And then Pete Carroll is the one on Wednesday now, or Thursday. Thursday.
I mean, this is the thing, and is Vrabel in person tomorrow?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah. So I think that's the key thing is, the talk from Kevin Warren was, you go through all this, you hear what they have to say, and understand what they envision for this team moving forward, and then you cut it down from there to say this guy or these guys get it, and then make your decision from there. To that point, will he even make it to Chicago? If the Bears are impressed that much by Mike Vrabel and what he brings to the table tomorrow in that interview, then flip the script. Don't let him leave Chicago. I don't care about interviewing really 80% of these guys on this list. I think a lot of it is ridiculous. The fact that we're even mentioning Mike Kafka's name in this list is an embarrassment, let alone you have other guys like, Arthur Smith that's even been thrown around, who was horrendous in Atlanta and is mirrored in the third longest current losing streak in the NFL with the Pittsburgh Steelers right now, mind you, as their offensive coordinator. It has not gone well for him as of late. And I don't understand how that's someone that they can even consider, given all of these things that they're looking for in a head coach. Yet you're sitting here with Mike Vrabel. You're talking about players who are on your current roster who are praising him for being one of the best coaches that they have ever been with, that will guarantee you have guys on your current roster who will respect him and listen to what he has to say. And no, we're gonna turn over every rock.
Yeah, I mean, well, Arthur Smith was with Vrabel in Tennessee, so might be coming back as OC if they hire Vrabel. I don't know. I mean,
Man.
I don't think you can. Do you offer the job to Mike Vrabel tomorrow without even talking to Ben John? I mean, I don't know,
I
man.
want to see something different than what we've been accustomed to in these searches. And that's the thing that troubles me, is that we haven't. We're going around on this carousel. Yeah, there's no Bill Polian this time around. But
Oh, not
again, you
yet.
have this, not yet.
Not yet.
But you have this committee, again, a committee of people, and you're interviewing all of these people, and you're dragging it out, and you're doing these things that arguably are not the best option for what you're trying to do and what you're claiming that you're looking for. Again, there's 6 openings right now. I think universally it has been pretty much agreed upon that the Bears job is the best job available. There's a lot of people that'll
Yeah,
say it's the Patriots.
I think the
I
only argument's the Patriots in my eyes. It's the only
yeah,
argument.
I don't see Jacksonville as enticing. I definitely don't see the Raiders as enticing. I don't think anybody does. I don't think the Jets are enticing
Yeah,
with
I need better
whatever is going
quarterbacks.
on with that team. I mean, that's going to be a major overhaul. What do you do with Aaron Rodgers? There's a lot there that's an unknown, not dealing with the best situation in terms of how that team's put together. So again, you're putting forward something that should entice
Yeah,
everybody that you are interviewing. And if you cannot sit here again for the last month and say, these are the guys, the top 3 we feel most, confident about that can get the job done moving forward, and call it due diligence, and then potentially lose out on them. It
yeah,
just it's so backward thinking.
but it kind of sounds like they're gonna have, like, if they want Mike Vrabel, they're gonna have to move really fast, and then you're not gonna, you know what I mean? Like, because
Yeah.
I get what you're saying, because like I really feel like Patriots are probably, Mike Vrabel holds all the cards, but the Patriots are probably the top destination for him. It just makes too much sense. What about the Raiders? Tom Brady's gonna have an influence out there. Buddies with Mike Vrabel.
It's such a bad roster.
Oh, it's a bad roster, but you get to live out in the desert. You got Tom Brady. You're gonna have a good draft pick. You have a star in Brock Bowers on offense. You have a star Max Crosby on defense. I don't know. I get what you're saying. I'd be absolutely shocked if we left tomorrow and the Bears are making an offer like that right away. I don't know. I don't see it. Who knows? Vrabel might take his time too.
Right. Well, and that's true. But I mean, to this point, and we've seen it very recently in Chicago history with really every team. The Bulls acted quickly on Billy Donovan.
Yeah.
The Cubs acted quickly on Craig Counsell. Before that, they acted quickly on Joe Madden. They knew what they needed to do. They're doing this thing that allows them. They need to look at what other teams within the city are doing and say, okay, maybe we should act quickly. Maybe we should, put all our eggs in one basket and be confident. I just feel like there's zero confidence in what they're doing here. It's like they need to have, second, third, fourth opinions to finally feel comfortable in making a decision, because I think they're so damn scared of screwing it up again that, it just is what it is.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know, man. I don't know. I think they're going to take their time with it, man. I really do. I think they're going to take their time with it. They're going to turn over every stone, like they said. Um, I don't know. I think I released my tiers earlier, and I still think it's Ben Johnson. I think that's a slam dunk. I got Vrabel too, though. I got
Okay,
Vrabel
so
right there.
top 5, 1 to 5.
1 to 5. Let me grab the list. So here's how I did it. I did tiers, but I'll give you my top 5.
Okay.
One's Ben Johnson, two's Mike Vrabel. That was my first tier.
Okay.
My second tier was Aaron Glenn, Joe Brady, Brian Flores, Todd Monken, and Mike McCarthy. So
Okay.
we have to cut out McCarthy.
Yep.
So I guess number 3 for me would be Joe Brady. Aaron Glenn would be 4. I wouldn't mind flip-flopping those. I think Joe Brady is probably the next offensive mind you go after if you can't get Ben Johnson. I know he's worked with Josh Allen. I know he's worked with Joe Burrow. For me, with Joe Brady, the thing that I like is you look at this Bills roster this year, and it's bad. And a lot of people said Jets going to win that division. The
Yep.
Dolphins could win that division. He's got Mac Hollins. He's got Curtis Samuel, Khalil Shakir catching passes from Josh Allen and putting MVP like, I don't know if he'll get it, but an MVP like season together. James Cook, I believe, 3rd most touchdowns total in the NFL this year, non-quarterback. I like what he's done with the offense. Is he ready, though? Is he a guy that's ready? We'll see. I'd say he's my number 3/4. Aaron Glenn's the other one in Detroit. I'm kind of putting on the Honolulu blue glasses. I like what Detroit's doing, and this is why I like Ben Johnson too. I don't know why we have to say culture changer, a leader of men, and we automatically think defense. I think it can be true with offense. I think you get an offensive guy in there, change that culture. Here's why I think Ben Johnson and Aaron Glenn are good for that. And Aaron Glenn, the defensive coordinator. What NFL team has arguably had the biggest change of culture in the last 4 years?
Oh, it's the Detroit Lions.
Detroit Lions. What do we think of Detroit? Blue collar, tough, love their football, a lot of losing seasons. We all laughed. I mean, I laughed. I'm sure you did when Dan Campbell's talking about the biting the knees and all that stuff. I mean, dude, they play tough. They play tough. They play through the whistle. It might be a little dirty at times. They play tough. They want to win games in week 18. I know this year they had the whole Vikings lines. Look how many people criticized them for the week 17 game against the 49ers, which meant absolutely nothing. Meant absolutely nothing to them. And they went through and they played. Ben Johnson was unleashing trick plays. Aaron Glenn had the Vikings in hell in week 18. Had Sam Darnold in absolute hell. He's had Jordan Love in hell. Actually, you put those games together, I think Caleb Williams probably had the 2 best games in the division. Maybe not. I'll have to go back and look, but probably 2 of the better games. So yeah, I think both those guys could change the culture. My number 5. So we got McCarthy out. This one's tough though, because I want to lean offense and I want to lean Todd Monken from Baltimore. However, it's kind of the same thing with Vrabel with me, man. Like, he had Derrick Henry. He has Derrick Henry. He's got Lamar Jackson. And my damn desk is. I do agree. I made the point of Joe Brady, the Ravens not having, the Bills not having a lot of wide receivers. Outside of Mark Andrews, like, who do the Ravens have?
Zay Flowers.
But he's not top 10. He's not top 15.
I mean, he's still a Pro Bowler this year.
Pro Bowler. Okay, who's the number 2?
Rashad Bateman.
Okay, there you go. Not top 20, not top 25, not top 30. So yeah, I mean, it's Zay Flowers is probably the best wide receiver out of the 6 or the 5 that we mentioned between the Bills and the Ravens. But
yeah,
I don't know, man. I like his offensive style. The Brian Flores thing is tricky, man. Like
I don't think they're gonna get cute and entertain it seriously.
So he's got the connection with Bulls.
He does,
the Boston College thing.
I truly think, with the Bears being, one of the original franchises and, just being the old school, that they won't go against what might be kind of a tense situation with the league, and the fact that there's been the legal elevation from his camp after his tenure with the Dolphins, in the wrongful termination and the racism and everything. I don't think that is something that George will allow the Bears to get into and potentially bring, regardless of the phenomenal job he has done as a defensive coordinator. And I think
Yes.
it's part of the reason why the Vikings even looked at him as a defensive coordinator, because they thought there's not a chance in hell anybody is going to come after this guy with a serious notion for at least a couple years
Yeah.
until all of this dies down. And I still think that's true, because it's gonna bubble as soon as we hear something new about, where that leads, because it's still out there.
Yeah. And I do think like he is this number 5, 6 on my list. I the only thing I'm holding on to is, maybe they give him a second chance. They've seen him now 4 times in the last 2 years. I don't know. I will say, well, let's just say this now. So Mike Kafka will interview for the job on Thursday, according to Jeremy Fowler. So
Yeah.
we have that would be the no name for me. That would be the absolute no. That and David Shaw. Shaw.
Here's
Kafka,
the thing about David Shaw, though, and he's one of those where the hot
Arthur
name
Smith.
expired. I mean, 5 years ago, people were banging down Shaw's door to say, "Come interview," and he turned them all down.
Yeah, well, now he gets an interview every year with almost
Right.
every team. That's a now you can pay. He charges $30,000 for a public speaking appearance.
Really?
I believe so. Yeah, someone showed me.
I mean, I know he was a good coach at Stanford, but what?
Maybe the Bears are paying him that much money.
Maybe. Just come in and talk for 3 hours.
So Shaw, Kafka, yeah, Shaw, Kafka, and Arthur Smith would be the no thanks, don't want it, anything to do. The rest of them, I could sit in bed, talk myself into it a little bit. Outside of a couple of things, I'd be disappointed. I think if you don't come away with Ben Johnson or Mike Vrabel, I'd be very disappointed. The name I do want to see them interview. Yeah, I put Joe. I think Joe Brady be a okay hire. I could. He'd be my top 3, as I said. The name I do want to see him hire or interview is Liam Cohen in Tampa Bay. At least interview him.
Okay.
The fantasy guy, I mean, dude, Godwin was out week 4?
Yeah, I mean,
Mike Evans
hell of a
missed
job.
6 weeks. Like Jalen McMillan looks like a star out there. Bucky Irving. Kate Otten, it's crazy. And Baker's playing at a high level. So yeah, that's my list. Petzing is another guy I'm kind of intrigued by. I had him on tier 3.
Yeah.
Here's what I think. I think next year he'll be one of the hot names in the offensive category. I don't know if it'd be a Ben Johnson, but
yeah, I think if anything, Kyler Murray's limitations is going to hold him back from being a serious candidate, that we see just so much inconsistency that it's going to come back to bite him.
Someone told me that. Someone actually talked to someone that watches the Cardinals and follows them, and he said, and we were talking about this. He said, great run game coordinator, can really get the run game going. The pass game has been blah, but how much of that is Kyler Murray's limitations too?
Yeah, because I mean, Trey McBride looked incredible this year. Just otherworldly. And I don't think he got the credit that he truly deserved in regards to the tight end game, and just overall compared to his peers in the league. I know Brock Bowers getting a lot of the hype, but yeah, that's just not a name that gets me.
It's a weird name.
It is a weird name, and I think our lists are pretty similar. Obviously Ben Johnson or Mike Vrabel. I think it's a situation where if you land either one of those, you did a stand-up job and you got what you needed to get done. Past that, I struggle. I want to say Aaron Glenn is my 3.
Okay.
I think based on just all the injuries that he's had to deal with this year and the fact that
Yep.
Detroit defense has been incredible. You're talking about a former player who had a very, very successful and long career in the league with the Jets, with the Texans. He can speak to the player. I think that's a big, plus in his column for a guy that you want to bring in. And again, being able to adapt when things don't go according to plan, when you don't have your high draft picks and you're still able to get the job done like they did on Sunday night against the Vikings and stifling that offense from beginning to end of that game. I know he's not going to get signed. Just based on what we've heard about George McCaskey and even the hard knock stuff and the swearing, but Todd Monken, like he'd be fun, but just he's not the Bears
Yeah,
type
because you
of
imagine George just
guy.
like hovering over him, like, don't
Oh
cuss,
my
don't cuss,
gosh.
don't cuss,
Yeah.
don't cuss.
I that's the one thing there. I'm not as like I like the thought of Joe Brady, but I don't know if it's necessarily something that the personality will fit. I think 5 for me is a guy that just has the familiarity with Caleb, and that's Cliff Kingsbury. I think he'll do a better job
So
the second time around
yeah,
with a head coaching position. Because again, the Cardinals roster was so destroyed by the end of his tenure there, with them bringing in these high paid veterans that weren't performing. There was nothing else he truly could have done. And to be frank, I mean, he looked like he was getting the job done with Kyler. And obviously Kyler was a different guy before the ACL injury, but he's an offensive mind. He knows Caleb from USC. I think that those, talking about what Ryan Poles said about the plan for the quarterback and his growth and his potential, that there is that opportunity there to, push him forward as a candidate that, based on what you have now, has the experience coming in. It's something I think you have to consider.
I did not put Kingsbury just because I only did confirmed requests.
Fair.
If Kingsbury does get an interview, he would probably shoot up to 3 to me, 3, 4 area. So I would agree with you on that. I just wanted to make that just so I didn't.
I cheated.
Yeah, no, we didn't really go through. I did a separate draw on Twitter, and I just went with just the confirmed ones we know of now. But yes, if Kingsbury, I would. He's familiar. Oh my God,
Familiarity.
yes, with it's 908. Yeah, it's with Caleb Williams is definitely a big plus. But good news is we're gonna be able to talk about this with him, about him. Hopefully, if they do interview him, we'll be able to talk about it more.
I'd be shocked if they didn't at least inquire about it. And for all this talk about them, uncovering everything, casting a wide net, unless Caleb just said no, which is possible, which is why it hasn't happened, that they went to Caleb and they said, what are your thoughts on this? And he just said, yeah, no. I mean, it's
the other thing is they did talk to him for an offensive coordinator job.
Right. So maybe I mean, there's these potential, potential little tidbits here and there that might actually be leading to what actually happened. The other thing about Todd Monken too is he is a local guy. Grew up in the suburbs. So again, we know Ryan Poles loves his local talent.
So is Mike Kafka too.
So, oh man, what in what realm made them watch the New York Giants and say, you know what, this offensive coordinator is a pretty damn good guy. Like, we need to interview him for a position. Like, to me, Tyrone Tracy was a big thing. Neighbors had a great rookie season, but nothing about that offense screamed, this is great.
No,
like that name was between that and Arthur Smith. I'm like, what are they doing? Like, what is going on?
Yes, that That was a shocking one to me. That I even saw like the Arthur Smith. I was like, okay, I could kinda make it, but the Mike Kafka's just like, yep, Ryan Poles is familiar with him in Kansas City and he's from Chicago. So there you go. Yeah.
Check.
Check.
Come on
yes.
in. Waste 3 hours of our lives.
Yes. Any college prospects, if you're from the Chicago area, just get ready to be scouted by the Chicago Bears, potentially drafted and signed. So it's a weird fascination they have, man.
Yeah, that's one thing. I mean, if there's anything to reflect on, it's how that has not worked.
Yeah, no, not at all.
That's more or less how it goes with Ryan Poles and his homegrown talent mindset that continues to fail the Bears.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe we'll be doing emergency pod on Wednesday, and Mike Vrabel's the coach, and we're all proved wrong. But again, like we started off this episode, trust. It's not there.
Yeah. Hopefully they prove us wrong, man. Hopefully they definitely prove us wrong. I don't know. I have to see it though. I'm at the point where I got to see it to believe it. I just that's kind of been the theme for me in this, and I hope I'm wrong. I will eat crow. I will. If they get this right, it'll be great news for this franchise.
That it will. We've got plenty to talk about over the next month as this all unfolds and we get more details about who the Bears are indeed interviewing, bringing in for second interviews, and getting ready for the draft. The combine will be here before we know it, and we'll be talking about the Bears picking 10th overall in the upcoming 2025 NFL draft, and then 2 picks within 3 selections, I believe, in the second round. So a potential way to get some damage done and build this roster up, and free agency in between that. Just sandwich it all together, and
it moves fast.
Yeah, it will go very fast, but we'll be here to cover all of it as the offseason rolls on. But we thank all of you for hanging out with us here on this Tuesday evening as the head coach search is on for the Chicago Bears. Ryan Poles, Kevin Warren, and the clown car of candidates that make their way through Halas Hall and the Zoom accounts of the Chicago Bears. So for Zack Pearson, I'm Steven Johnson. Thanks for hanging out with us tonight. We'll be back very soon with more conversation here on the Bear Report social channels and wherever you listen to podcasts. Make sure you're subscribed, and always check out bearreport.com for the latest Chicago Bears news. Until next time, have a great evening, and we'll talk to you soon.
Easy.